meeting will come to order. The legal voters of the town of Middlebury and the county of Addison, the state of Vermont, are hereby warned and notified to meet at the Middlebury Union High School auditorium at 73 Charles Avenue in Middlebury on Monday, March 4th, 2019. That's I guess you have to get really close. Well, there's some advice to others who will be using microphones tonight. You have to get your lips within millimeters of it. The legal voters of the town of Middlebury, the county of Addison, state of Vermont, are hereby warned and notified to meet at the Middlebury Union High School auditorium at 73 Charles Avenue in Middlebury on Monday, March 4th, 2019 at 7 p.m. to act on Articles 1 through 8, and on Tuesday, March 5th, 2019 from 7 a.m. through 7 p.m. at the town offices, 77 Main Street in Middlebury, to vote by Australian ballot on Articles 9 through 13 as provided by the Middlebury Town Charter. Article 1 is to act on the reports of the town officers. And let me introduce the selectmen who are before you tonight. Lindsay Fuentes-George, Farhad Khan, Laura Asermely, Victor Nuovo, Nick Ardem, Brian Carpenter, Heather Seeley, and our town manager, Kathleen Ramsey. Initially, I'd ask your permission to allow some non-resident members of our town administration to participate in our discussion tonight. They include Kathleen, Chris English, our assistant town manager, Director of Public Works Planning Dan Werner, Director of Public Works Operations Bill Kernan, Library Director Dana Hart, Fire Chief David Shaw, and later in the agenda, Michael McAuliffe, the President of the Friends of Middlebury Hockey, who will make a presentation, if you are agreeable, on Article 7. Any objection to those non-Middlebury residents speaking tonight? I hear no objection. Just a word on mics. I was going to offer a comment before the malfunction a few minutes ago. The board had some feedback from our meeting 2 years ago when we were in this venue about the awkwardness of getting to the microphones to engage in discussion. There are two floor mics, of course, at the front of this aisle and halfway up the other one. But we also have some portable handheld microphones and a couple of runners who will make them available to you and pass them to you if you'd like to remain in your seat if you're not close to an aisle and can easily get to one of the standing mics. So if that's your preference, please raise your hand and we'll accommodate you. Kevin Newton is in the back with one on this side, and Carol has one up front. So please make your preference known if that's what you would like to do. And of course, please speak very close to the microphone and clearly, and make sure that we get your name for the minutes of our annual meeting. Let me call on Brian Carpenter, the chairman of the board, for some opening comments.
Good evening.
Really close.
Got to get really close, huh? Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. In response to your input on last year's town meeting, we've streamlined the non-business portion of tonight's agenda so that we have more time early in the meeting to discuss business items, including the Cross Street Bridge Fund Reserve, the Equipment Fund, and the budget. Also, in response to feedback from last year's meeting, this venue includes more comfortable seating. In order for us to move right into the business agenda, I will limit my comments to a few highlights of the year since the last town meeting. In 2018, the Select Board continued to focus on the Main Street and Merchants Row Bridge Replacement Project and planning for infrastructure improvements in and around the project area. Over the course of the last year, The community participated in developing conceptual designs for Triangle Park and the newly named Lazarus Park at the corner of Main Street and Printer's Alley, as well as plans for Merchants Row as a more pedestrian-friendly one-way street. In preparation for the planned resumption of Amtrak passenger rail service in 2021 or 2022, the community was consulted on the siting of a new passenger rail platform, which included an online opinion poll soliciting input on the 4 location options. The board endorsed the first-ranked location from the survey, Middle Seymour Street, which is across the tracks from the former railroad station on Seymour Street, in preparation for construction of the platform by the state in late 2020 or early 2021. Late in 2018, the town received the results of a hydraulic study of its water system that identified and made recommendations for prioritizing needed repairs and improvements to the system. With a total of more than 20 million of water projects identified and others that will be necessary over time, in 2019, the board will be focused on developing a sustainable, long-term funding strategy for these and other infrastructure improvement projects. A full, detailed report on the work of the Select Board in all of our departments is provided in the town report. In closing, I thank my fellow Select Board members, Nick Ardham, Laura Sermily, Heather Seeley, Victor Nuovo, Farhad Khan, and Lindsay Fuentes-George for their hard work, insights, and most of all, their unyielding commitment to our community. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Moderator.
Any questions? Obviously, we'll get into discussion when the board presents its budget and some other articles, but any questions of the board at this point? Questions of any municipal officials, since the issue is acting on their reports? Not Selectman Ardham.
A few millimeters, huh? Okay. Thank you. This year, we once again dedicate the annual town report to one of our own. And as in past years, this individual is someone who provides an outstanding example of what makes Middlebury the special place that it is. Jim Douglas came to Middlebury for his education and immediately became interested in the workings of town and state governance. Following his 1972 graduation, he decided to run for state legislature and on his first try won a seat representing Middlebury in the State House. After this legislative tenure, Jim won election and served as the Vermont Secretary of State. He was chair of the Porter Medical Center Board and briefly an assistant administrator at the hospital, and even spent some time as a farmhand on Dorothy's Foster Family Farm. He worked with the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, helping Russians as they attempted to establish a democratic election system following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Jim then returned to Vermont, where he served as the state treasurer and eventually served 4 terms as Vermont's 80th governor. Actually, as I look at your resume, and with all due respect, Governor, it seems to me that you've had some difficulty holding on to jobs. But he has held a specific job, and it's one that we all know well. For Jim has been our town moderator for 32 years, and unless we can convince him to stay, 2019 represents his final year in this role. Oh, and one of other Jim jobs that I forgot to mention is that he's the author of what I believe was an on the way to becoming Pulitzer Prize bestseller, The Vermont Way. Anyway, as I read the book, I learned that he decided to become town moderator while he was the Secretary of State, because he believed that in his role as the state's chief elections official, it was important to have a first-hand understanding and to participate directly in this most democratic of activities. As our moderator, we've seen Jim's unyielding dedication to good governance and democratic principles. Even during the most passionate discussions, Jim has always strived to make sure that multiple sides of the story have had their chance to be heard, and the dialogue was fair. A self-described cheapskate, Jim has made us all a bit richer with his calming demeanor and reassuring guidance at town meeting. And so now, as we have heard so many times at town meetings gone past, before us reads, whereas Jim Douglas has presided over the annual town meeting since 1986 with his calm demeanor, his dry sense of humor, and his amazing ability to know and remember the names of almost everyone in the audience. And whereas Jim has served not only the people of Middlebury as our state legislator, but the citizens of the state of Vermont as the Secretary of State, State Treasurer, and 4 terms as Vermont's governor. And whereas Jim drove countless hours to Montpelier for many years to maintain his residence here in Middlebury with his wife Dorothy and 2 sons, Matthew and Andres, so that he could stay connected to his family and community and people in it. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Middlebury is pleased to dedicate the 2018 town report to retiring moderator Jim Douglas. And so, as he's often said, do I have a motion for this?
No, out of order.
And do I have a second? I heard a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Governor, appears the ayes have it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, board. If we had more time, I'd ask for equal time, but I shan't because we have business to attend to. But that's unnecessary, but appreciated. It's been a real privilege and honor. But I strongly believe, as I did it with my state job, it's important not to do something forever, to pass the gavel literally. And I'm pleased that I found a worthy successor who, with your support tomorrow, will assume this responsibility and perhaps do it for another third of a century, Susan. Who knows? Oh, well, maybe not, but thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, let's get on with our business, unless there are any other questions for our town officials under Article 1. If not, is there a motion to accept their reports? By Catherine Nichols moves accepting the reports of the town officers. Jim Swift seconds it. Discussion? If not, all in favor of accepting the reports signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We've accepted the report of our town officials. Article 2. Shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote pursuant to 24 VSA Section 2804A to authorize the Select Board to apply $400,000 from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund to offset increased spending for capital improvements in the FY20 general fund budget and stabilize the FY20 tax rate. What's your pleasure regarding Article 2? Brian Carpenter moves adoption of Article 2. Is there a second? Seconded by Heather Seeley. Discussion on Article 2. Brian.
In the following presentation, I'll review the financing of the Cross Street Bridge, factors contributing to the surplus of revenue over expenses for the bridge, and the need for increased investment in infrastructure improvements. When initially proposed, funding to cover debt service and maintenance on the bridge was from 2 sources: a contribution of $600,000 per year from Middlebury College, matched by $650,000 from the local option tax. During the first year of the local option tax, 2009, annual local option tax receipts were right on target at $650,000 and have increased to just under $1 million since then. This chart shows annual revenue from the local option tax based on a 5-year average of $929,345, combined with the college payment of $600,000, compared to the decreasing bond payments. Let me show you. This is where we started with a delta, and the delta will grow to a little over $400,000 a year, is what we're currently projecting right now. Now this chart shows there are several years with major maintenance expenses overall, and the annual expenses are relatively minor. These are projected. We had a engineer projection done to tell us when planned maintenance should be done and to give us estimates what that maintenance would be. And so they are factored into this slide. You can see the first 10-year and a 20-year maintenance. Going forward, we project that revenues will exceed debt service and maintenance expenses for the bridge by approximately $400,000 or more each year, as shown in this projection for fiscal year 2020, with estimated revenues of just under $1.6 million compared to expenses of just under $1.2 million. Our Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund, the excess of revenues versus expense has resulted in a June 30th, 2018 year-end fund balance, or a surplus of $2 million. In February, noting the ongoing need for water, wastewater, highway, and stormwater infrastructure projects, and the burden that funding these projects will place on taxpayers and utility ratepayers, the Select Board accepted the Infrastructure Committee's recommendation that it formulate an integrated, sustainable, long-term plan to finance infrastructure improvements. As the Select Board develops a long-term funding strategy, which will likely include the use of excess local option tax revenue for the coming year, the Board proposes the use of the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund for capital improvements to continue to address a backlog of infrastructure improvements. Now I'll turn the presentation over to Select Board Member and Infrastructure Committee Chair Heather Seeley for an overview of upcoming capital improvement projects.
Heather.
Okay, in addition to a large list of ongoing projects, major projects planned for the coming year include Shardvilla Road, stabilization of 210 feet of riverbank, road resurfacing and recycling and paving of about 2,720 feet. The Seymour Street Pulp Mill Bridge Sideway Project, in cooperation with the Vermont Agency of Transportation, the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, and the Town of Weybridge. Reconstruction of the basketball courts in Harold Curtis Park in partnership with the East Middlebury Fire District. Increased funding in fiscal year 20 will allow the town to develop design plans for the following projects: the rail and platform and storm water improvements on Middle Seymour Street, Katy Road culvert improvements and road reconstruction, Court Street, Charles Avenue, Monroe Street intersection improvements, rehabilitation of buildings at the old wastewater treatment facility for some much-needed storage, and the second phase of Exchange Street pedestrian bike path work. The total fiscal year 2020 proposed budget for voter approval is $11,155,400. The total to be raised by taxes, if Article 2 is not approved, is $7,836,854. Total to be raised by taxes if Article 2 is approved is $7,436,854. If Article 2 is approved, the estimated tax rate increase will be reduced by 4.53 cents, from 6.68 cents to 2.15 cents. This is a reminder that the actual FY20 budget will depend on the final grand list total after the reappraisal, which is scheduled to be completed in April of this year. Now we will be happy to answer any questions you may have on Article 2.
Questions for Heather or Brian on Article 2? Oh, yes, sir.
Hi, Dave Silberman. You listed a few infrastructure-related projects to be funded in FY 2020. Is there a number associated with that? What's the bottom line number for the cost of those projects?
For each individual project
No,
or
altogether.
the total?
I'm just wondering if, do they total up to the 400,000 that we're taking from the bridge fund?
No. So Kathleen may be able to give you a better answer. That part of the money will stabilize the tax rate, and part of it is the increase in the capital budget.
Kathleen?
So there are a couple of things going on. We have planned a $266,000 increase in capital improvements from FY19 to FY20. In FY19, as you may recall, the board, the town meeting also approved a $57,484,000 transfer from the capital improvement fund, from the Cross Street Bridge Fund. So those two combined are $323,000. In order to sustain capital improvement spending, the board, rather than cutting capital improvement spending to keep a realistic increase in the tax rate, opted to ask for $400,000 to sustain capital improvement spending. So there's about $76,000 in excess of the increase in capital improvement spending.
So if I can ask a follow-up question, I'm having a hard time squaring the desire to use the excess local option tax revenues for long-term infrastructure planning with the desire to use bridge excess money for tax stabilization. Those two things seem very different and at odds with one another. How do you square that?
Brian?
Sure, I'm happy to try to answer that. I'll tell you that we have increase in the budget that happens every year as a result of the contractual relations that we have with employees, the increase in cost of doing business from increase in insurance, health insurance, other benefits. And so without raising the taxes, because our grand list has not gone up as fast as we would like, we are looking at utilizing some of the we're looking at utilizing some of the local option tax. And this will be something, part of the reason, thank you. Part of the reason why we wanted to talk about it tonight is because this is really a funding mechanism that we're looking at for some of these long-term capital improvement needs for the community. Middlebury has a greater share of the services for their surrounding community, and a local option tax is one of the very few taxes that everybody in the greater community provides some of the funds for. You look at a lot of the shire towns and other counties, and they have a local option tax, and it's not so hamstrung as to be for a specific project. It's utilized for the other infrastructure needs of the community. So that is a good question. It's for some of the other infrastructure needs that we have, that we've identified, that we need to plan for. We need to get to the level of planning where we know exactly the engineering would be done, and we would know what the costs are to bring forth a bond.
Other questions of the board? Yes. We having a mic right here.
Thank you. Good evening, Elizabeth Ottinger, Middlebury. I just have a question about capital spending on water and sewer infrastructure. Is this the right time to raise that, or will there be another opportunity later in the meeting?
I think this is a good time to raise that.
Great, thank you. There have been various reports about the continued breakdown of our aging facilities. In my own residence, Evergreen Lane, there was a huge problem during one of the most brutally cold days, and the town was brilliant in fixing it. But the fact is, I'm just wondering whether the planned expenditure is keeping up with the degradation of our facilities, or whether we expect to see more emergency repairs as opposed to improvement of the existing facilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, and I might ask Dan to help, but the majority of our breaks seem to be concentrated in several areas. Those are our top 3 priorities, and we're looking to bring a bond forth in this following year to repair those 3 priorities. That's part of what this planning that we're trying to get through on this budget brings us to that level of definition that we can say, this is how much it's going to cost, and we're asking for a bond. We have to determine how much of that would be shared with the users and how much is perhaps taken as a part of the town's infrastructure. And so that's part of the challenge for the infrastructure committee, is to propose a method how those costs would be shared.
Heather.
Can I
Go
answer?
ahead. Yeah.
So, with the help of our Director of Planning, Dan Warner, who is sitting over there, this spring or winter, the Infrastructure Committee has been working on identifying a replacement schedule for our infrastructure and trying to identify how much money we would need to set to keep on top of our aging infrastructure and what those numbers look like so we can better plan. We are seeing an increase in breaks because we do have some older services, and we are trying to get on top of addressing those, and that is part of the plan for the next coming year and our agenda.
Other questions on Article 2? Yes, in the back.
Turn it on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I have a couple questions. You're Annette Jack,
Annette,
J-A-C-K. You're saying that we are going to have a $400,000 surplus every year from the Bridge Reserve Fund. Is that correct? Approximately, for how long?
That's correct.
And if you put that $400,000 toward tax stabilization, what's the difference in my tax bill for pretending I had a $200,000 house? What are you saving me by doing that?
So it'd be 4.5 cents per 100. So that's times 2,000, what's that, $100 or
it.
something? $90? I think that's $90.
So for $90, what other things did you consider putting this $400,000 surplus to?
I would say we've done a tremendous amount of diligence on this matter, and we feel that this is the area that the town will receive the greatest value from. We hear a lot of issues. If one of the concerns for bringing new businesses to Exchange Street is the lack of dependability of water down there. There's a number of infrastructure segments that are in need of repair. And we can't do it out of cash, and we can't do it on an annual budget. And so we need to be able to allocate more on an annual basis for infrastructure improvements.
But you're also still going to ask for a bond.
The bond would hopefully be paid by the $400,000 excess.
For many years?
I'm sorry?
For many years?
Yes. And I can't, that's why we have to get better clarity on the exact size of what the need of the infrastructure is. And without doing the engineering on that, we can't bring it to you for the vote. We're asking for, call it a leap of faith. But I think we've spent a lot of time discussing this at the select board level with town officers, with engineers, and we feel that what we are proposing to do for work this year moves us in the right direction.
Can I say one more thing? You mentioned the businesses on Exchange Street, and I certainly, as a taxpayer, would love to have my taxes lowered. I certainly support infrastructure repairs and updating. But I wondered if you considered the downtown businesses who are suffering so greatly during this bridge project. Would $400,000 do anything for them?
I would tell you that we're spending a lot of money in the downtown, and the downtown businesses will have a place to be proud of, and will bring a lot more people because of the facilities that will be there when it's all done.
Another question? Yes, in the back.
Susan McGarry of Middlebury. This is just ancillary to the actual article, but I really like the list of projects that were presented to us. Where does one go to find more complete descriptions of those projects?
Heather.
So if you go to the town's website, are you familiar with looking up the select board packets? Well, all of the committees have similar packets, and we definitely do for infrastructure. We typically meet once a month. The first Thursday or second? Second Thursday, sorry. And sometimes twice a month. In that, if you go to the committees under the website and you look for the infrastructure committee, there's packets there. All the information from our past meetings are there. Everything we've discussed, any proposals that staff's put together is there. The hydrology study that we had done this fall, the results of that are there, the summary's there. You can, welcome to look at any of that information. If you need help accessing that information, just let one of us know, and we could certainly give you paper copies too.
Well, go ahead, Adrian.
Hey there, RJ Adler. I don't believe in dumb questions, which is good because I ask a lot of them. Can you explain the difference, or can you explain how we got a surplus in a tax, and what a local option tax is, and how using the surplus from one tax is going to lower other taxes for us? It seems like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
So the local option tax is a 1% add-on for a sales tax in the community. It's been approved by the state to do that. There's many communities around the state that do that now. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Burlington that was proposing to go to 2 cents to support their infrastructure needs. That's paid by people who are buying things that are taxable in town. And it's paid by, everyone who buys a car. And we have a number of the greater community car dealers here. Everybody who buys a tractor who does not have a tax exemption. Everybody who buys food and services. And so some of that is paid for by tourists, some of that is paid for by people outside the communities. And so it's a mix so that it doesn't all come out of our property tax. We've been actually very successful in keeping the property tax rate very level for a number of years. And thanks to everybody supporting us on some of our use of either the excess in reserve or the excess in the Cross Street Bridge Fund. And we're at the point now where we would like to use a little bit more. And so the select board asked that we put this, we talked about it, we asked to put this on the agenda. And it was aggressive because we're looking to try to tackle some of these infrastructure needs. I'll give you examples. Is the second phase of the sidewalk on Exchange Street. We have funding to take us down through to Catamount Park. But Exchange Street is a very dangerous street, a lot of big trucks on that. Yet we have one of the popular fitness centers, and we have a lot of hospital and college employees. There's a lot of people who walk down that road. I happen to know I have a business on Exchange Street, and I always worry about our overweight loads with pedestrians on that street. And so I think it's right that the citizens that work down in that area would ask for a sidewalk. And we're trying to get there. And we've been doing a lot of it with grant funding, thanks to our excellent town staff. But we've run out of that option. We haven't gotten any more grant funds for a couple of years, and I think they want to see the town put a little bit of the town's money into it. So if we do the design process, I think it makes us highly competitive for a grant. And so we're going to continue to pursue grants, but you're more competitive on a grant if you've already done the engineering and you have the project ready to go.
Thanks.
Mr. Silverman?
Thank you. Brian, I'm still struggling to understand this because you're telling us that we need to take $400,000 from this fund for infrastructure projects, but you're presenting to us about $325,000 of infrastructure projects. So I'm struggling to understand how tax buy-downs are the same thing as infrastructure investments. I don't think they are.
No, it's a combination of both. I'm not telling you it's all infrastructure. There is some that's a tax stabilization, and I think we proposed it as for infrastructure investment and tax stabilization to reduce it. It takes us from I think it takes us down from 6.5 cents to, 6.5 cents to 2 cents, just over 2 cents.
Other questions of the board? John?
Thank you. Having been on both sides of this aisle, I certainly know the struggle that the board goes through dealing with its budget preparation each year.
John, can you get the mic a little closer?
Excuse me. I say, having done this for a number of years and worked on your side of the table, I recognize how difficult it is making these budgets and the struggle that the board goes through to bring it to a point where there's an acceptable budget for voters to be able to pay their taxes and to meet the town's needs. And certainly for more years than Jim has been there as moderator, the board has been in a position to have to whittle at capital improvement needs to try to keep that tax rate down. And here we have an opportunity as the indebtedness drops and the bond payments drop. That's how the fund generates more cash than needed. Comes down, then a surplus is created over a bond that has a 30-year life. So it has about 21 more years to go in its life. And so in this case, we have a chance to meet some of the needs that we need to fund to keep town infrastructure in reasonable condition and not be adversely impacting the taxes. So I, for one, am very pleased to support this move. I think it's very bright to do so. Thank you.
Yes, the gentleman right there.
Ross Conrad, Middlebury. Could you just share what the potential downsides are from using the Cross Street Bridge Reserve funds for tax stabilization and infrastructure improvements?
Geez, Ross, you know, I'm the type I like to show both sides, and I really struggle to find a downside other than like what Dave is struggling with on using some of that for tax stabilization. I think it's a rational use of the funds because we are the Shire town, and those funds are coming in from outside the town, and it's part of, you know, we're the ones we're paying for the majority of the recreation center that all the outlying communities use. We have a lot of the tax-exempt properties for the nonprofits that come off from our grand list. And so for me, I don't find, you know, the one thing would be if we became hooked on it and we really thought we were going to sunset it, because at some point, you know, if we bond, those bonds are going to continue, and it would be a real shock. I, for one, am not a proponent for sunsetting it. I think it's a real smart way for a Shire community to sustain the capital needs of supporting all the additional infrastructure that come with that community. So I'm struggling to find a real downside.
Other? Victoria.
Hi, Victoria DeWin. I do support this proposal, and I agree with your comments on that there's no downside to this. And I want to be clear, you say there's currently $2 million in extra funds beyond maintenance and repairs. So using the $400,000 leaves $1.6 million, which is a very generous cushion. And I could see that this money should be considered as a way to avoid having to buy bonds that only create extra cost to us in the interests. If we can afford to buy things with cash, let's do that. It ends up saving us in the end. And I'm not saying deplete the fund, but I'd like to see us be more generous in using that money. I think it would behoove us to invest in our community in that way too.
Yes, Kevin, up to your left there, in the middle, young lady.
I thought you were going to speak.
Oh, wealth of microphones.
All right. Hi, Allison Neihart. Ooh, that's loud. I'm trying to understand this, but it sounds to me as if one of the dynamics here is that some communities may adopt a local option tax that goes straight into their general fund, for example, and that in our case, we tapped it for a specific purpose, and so to use it for any other purpose, we need to get permission from the voters. Is that a correct understanding?
You're correct.
Okay. I guess my second question then is would you expect to be coming back to us next year with a similar request related to infrastructure, or have you thought out to future years about how the extra funds might be used? It looked like there was one spike for FY20 that would be an infrastructure investment, and then I'm wondering if you've thought about going out further from that, whether it would be predominantly used for things that come up from year to year that's unanticipated, or to sort of offset the property taxes.
Okay, very good question. The spikes in the graph were the expected expenditures for maintenance of the bridge. That was not our $400,000 ask right now. So those were year by year, not a cumulative. So that spike that we're projecting is what we project based upon the engineer's estimate of routine maintenance that we should do to that bridge. As far as utilization, I believe that we're going to come to you and ask to leverage that as opposed to spending it all, to keep it and use it to leverage on a bond, because if you look at the cost of some of the infrastructure projects that will be coming down the road, they're significant. And if we bond them over a longer period of time, with that excess, we can leverage that. The bonds are very, for a municipal bond, we're looking, I believe, at about a 3% rate. And that's still relatively cheap. And I know we pay some interest, but it would keep us, my proposal would be to keep some of that cash in the bank for a rainy day, not to spend it all.
Allison, we didn't get your last name for the minutes, I'm sorry. Nyhart. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Diane Lawson. It seems a very reasonable disposition of the money, since you're only touching $400,000 out of a $2 million surplus, and since you are using more than three quarters of the $400,000 towards your designated project, capital improvements, and then taking, as I understand it, $75,000 towards reducing taxes. Is this correct?
Roughly, yes.
In round numbers. Thank you very much for making a reasonable proposal to the voters.
Other questions of the board or discussion? Yes, sir.
Tim Bird, I live in Middlebury. So my question revolves around how the Cross Street Bridge Fund is funded. I understand that the college is going to be continuing forward with the $600,000, but I guess my question to the board is, how confident are you that that option tax revenue stream is going to stay consistent throughout the projections of what you're doing? Is it going to go up? I saw when you first, early on, the chart went up substantially, then it kind of flatlined out, but the question is, moving forward, do you see that option tax staying flat or increasing, and what happens if it decreases as far as revenue from the tax is concerned?
That's a good question. I think I'd need an economist to help me on this one. Some people say we're due for a correction soon, but what you saw is coming off from the 2007-2008 recession, and you can see it continued to grow. The last 2 years have been relatively flat. It's tough for me to project, but I would be willing to stake that it will not decline any faster. My guess is it won't decline any faster than the bond declines, but I'm hoping that it'll continue to grow as we bring more businesses to town, as downtown gets back to full operation, as we've basically the major car dealers in Addison County have focused in Middlebury now, and I don't. It would take a major recession, I think, to really drop that, given what is feeding into it right now.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Adam Franco. This proposal sounds great to me for this year. I don't have any problems with it. I'm wondering, going forward, is there an advantage of keeping this cross-street bridge fund funded by the local option tax separate from the other general funds? Or would it be just simpler to send all that money into the general fund and go through the normal budgetary process with that? Is there a reason that it needs to stay separate long-term?
The foundation that we have it on, right? Yeah. It would take a voter effort to, we'd have to bring something to the voters to change that. I don't think we're prepared for that yet, because we want to have a strategy in place, and that's our challenge for this upcoming year, is to have a funding strategy that's sustainable for some of what we're projecting as the major infrastructure needs. Hopefully we can bring something so that we don't have to do this every single year, something that's more of a continuum, but we're not quite ready for that yet, so this is a one-time, and we're trying to give you a peek behind the scenes, really, of what we're talking about, what we're grappling with. There's some pretty significant projects, big numbers, and we'll never get them done if we don't come up with a way to do it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the infrastructure improvements that are being made, and hope that they can be funded long-term without necessarily having to nickel and dime every year. So thanks.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Thank you. Roger Desitels. I have no problem with the infrastructure improvement aspect of this, but I remember back to when the bridge was originally proposed and the funding was explained, and my recollection is that the 1% tax was to be used for paying off the bond, and that when the bond was paid off, the 1% tax would be eliminated. With the amount of money coming in, if it wasn't a bond, I don't know about bonds, I'm not an economist, but I see some opportunity to pay off the bond early and eliminate the 1% tax. And the reason I'm interested in that is because I think the 1% tax has a negative effect on Middlebury businesses. I personally know a lot of people who don't shop in Middlebury anymore. Maybe it's only 1%, but people think about that when they make the decisions. And I feel a little betrayed with this idea that, well, I was told that this would be sunsetted, and it doesn't seem to be much movement in that direction, quite the opposite. So that's my concern. Perhaps you can alleviate that concern.
I have read minutes where somebody's talked when it was initially discussed about sunsetting it. I'll tell you right now, I'm not a proponent of sunsetting it. I have to collect as much tax as anybody else, and I recognize that. We're up against New Hampshire. If somebody wants to drive that far, I understand it, but I don't see a way without having a major new enterprise, tax-paying enterprise moving into Middlebury, or a significant uptick in property taxes to do what needs to be done and really believe that we're going to sunset this local option tax. It cannot be done.
John?
My understanding is, from what you've said, Brian, that the $400,000 you're asking us to authorize, $325,000 would be allocated to improving infrastructure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That means that $75,000 will not be used to improve infrastructure, correct?
That is also correct.
And you've been telling us that we have, in the near future, many expensive projects to improve and address infrastructure. Unfortunately, you haven't presented a list of what those are, so it's really hard to know which ones we like and which ones we don't, or how much they cost. As a member of the board of Ilsley Library, that's a major infrastructure project which will come before the voters in the next 5 years or so. I think it's penny foolish to take $75,000 away from paying for infrastructure needs and putting it to reducing our property taxes. You said, I think, that a $200,000 house would save by this $75,000 allocation $90 a year. Are you sure of that?
So that's was for the $400,000. For the $75,000, that would be about $10, $20 for a $200,000 house.
Thank you. So I think it's important to realize that we're saying that you will save $10 or $20 now in order, and you will as a result, be taking away from money to pay for infrastructure in the future, whether that is the library, water needs, sewer needs, or another building. I don't think that's a smart thing to do. I think you've made the case yourself, Brian, and so did Mr. Tenney, that having money available to deal with infrastructure, and those needs are unpredictable because, as you know, they suddenly can break. So I would suggest that we authorize only $325,000 and retain the balance in our infrastructure fund.
Is that a motion, John?
If a motion is in order, Mr. Moderator, I'll make that as a motion.
Certainly in order. Mr. Frieden offers an amendment to Article 2 to replace the figure $400,000 with the figure $325,000. Is that correct?
If I could just clarify that.
Well, let's just get a second to the.
I think David Silverman.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Silverman. Brian.
The total capital improvements on the budget is $1,272,000, just so you know, there was the additional that we're talking about. And there was a list given that we went through what some of those items are that we're working on. Heather presented that as part of the PowerPoint. And the $75,000 is half of that is for the extra position of Ilsley Library. And so, just so you know, John, proof. So, we're trying to do some things that we feel really need to be done in the community, that the community needs, and we're trying to do it and not impact the low-income members of the community.
Heather?
So when the select board got to the point of budgeting this year, the infrastructure committee had proposed an infrastructure budget that was, like Brian just said, almost $1.3 million. And when we got to the point where we knew what the tax rate was going to be, we felt we were asking too much of voters. And so the option at that point was to consider cutting the infrastructure budget down to keep the tax rate where we felt it was acceptable to bring it to you, or we could choose to take more money more of the reserve of the Cross Street Bridge Fund to meet it. And I think the semantics of this $75,000, we're really investing a large chunk of our annual budget in infrastructure every year per this budget. And saying that $75,000 it is stabilizing the tax fund because we chose to look at it that way, but we're really investing way more than that in infrastructure every year. So,
Dan?
I'm Dan Brown. I own the Swift House Inn. I'm always in favor of reducing anything to reduce property taxes. I own a business in town, and when I came here 14 years ago, I was paying about $38,000 a year in property taxes. I'm now paying over $50,000. If we have that tax rate increase of 6 cents, that raises my taxes by $1,300 a year. That doesn't sound like much. If we do the 2 cents, it raises my property taxes by $440. Adding $1,000 to my property tax or $1,500 to my property tax every year is something that comes out of my pocket, out of my revenue. That drives me out of business. I contribute about $14,000 a year from my guests in my business to the 1% for the bridge fund. So, you know, you look at it at $20 out of your pocket for property tax, yeah, that's doable. I can do that when I buy my home. But it's getting very difficult to run any business in this town when my property taxes are going that high. And yes, I'm a big landowner because I have 4 acres of land, but the most significant factor that hurts us is that property tax. It creeps up and up and up and up, and we should do whatever we can to prevent that from doing that. Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Yes, motion to close debate is in order, and your name? Marilyn Barbado. Hi, Marilyn. I didn't know you'd moved to Middlebury. Is there a second to the motion to close debate on this question? Jim Swift seconds. So the question is, shall debate cease on the proposed amendment, which is to change that $400,000 figure to $325,000? The question is on closing debate. Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and we've closed debate. The question now is, shall the amendment as offered by Mr. Frieden be approved, which is to change the $400,000 figure to $325,000? All in favor of that proposed amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Noes appear to have it. The noes do have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. The recurring question is, shall Article 2 be adopted? Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like to call that question, and my name is Linda Horn.
Linda Horn moves that debate cease on the article itself. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Neal Gruber. All in favor of closing debate on Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and you've ended debate. The question now is, shall Article 2 be adopted? Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor of adopting Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 2. Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Middlebury authorize the Select Board pursuant to 24 VSA Section 1786A, Subsection B, to replace town vehicles and equipment in accordance with the schedule hereinafter set forth, and to finance the purchase of same by borrowing funds in a total amount not to exceed $133,470 over a term not to exceed 5 years. The schedule of vehicles and equipment is 1 police cruiser and related equipment, 1 dump truck, snowplow and related equipment, and 1 pickup truck for use by the Recreation Department. What's your pleasure regarding Article 3? And Webster moves adoption of the article. Is there a second? Seconded by Brian. Question is, shall Article 3 be adopted? Heather, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. I have already. Can you hear me okay? I'm not as tall as Brian. All right, Article 3 is to authorize the Select Board to borrow up to $133,470 to purchase a police cruiser, a dump truck / snowplow, and related equipment, and a pickup truck for use by the Recreation Department. So this slide here shows our replacement schedule. Patrol cruisers are 4 years, Mainline plow equipment, 7 years. Vehicles, 10 years. Support equipment, 15 years. Yellow iron and miscellaneous, small tools, equipment type stuff is 20 years. This slide here demonstrates the value of our equipment fund rolling stock as of 2019. I don't think I'll go through each of the lines and all the numbers unless somebody would like me to. This is to try to demonstrate to the voters the amount of rolling stock that the town of Middlebury is maintaining and replacing regularly. One police cruiser. We're cycling out one of the older, higher maintenance cars for trade-in against the purchase of a new car. The estimated cost of replacing the cruiser and equipment is $37,000. The proposed dump truck snowplow replacement is replacing a 2005 Mack Tandem dump truck. Purchase price is estimated at $235,000. This is offset by wastewater and water reserves of $48,714. An FY20 Public Works Equipment Fund replacement funds of $127,816. This is money that we have in reserve already to put towards equipment replacement, which results in $58,470 to be borrowed. This truck is anticipated to be replaced on a 7-year cycle. We're also proposing replacing a 2007 pickup truck, which is currently used by Highway and Parks and Recreation departments. It's used for field maintenance, working on the gardens, and picking up garbage. This vehicle has a 10-year replacement anticipated and a purchase price estimate of $38,000. Give me your best questions.
Steve.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
Steve Meyer. I guess I'll ask you, although I have an almost annual history for a number of years now of asking Chief Hanley about the current status of police cruisers, either hybrid or electric police cruisers. And I know that there are an increasing number of communities around the country that have purchased such cars and that they are now in the market. And so I'd be curious about an update on that, but I'd also be interested in whether you've looked into similar vehicles for the sort of light-duty pickup you've got, at least in terms of your work that you're proposing for it to do. Thank you.
Yeah, so in response to your question about electric police cruisers or a hybrid variety, Chief Hanley did do an analysis of what was available out there, and when we were reviewing the recommendation in the Select Board Committee, he did put a memo together, and at this current time, given the 24/7 needs of the vehicle and not any downtime for charging and battery life expectancy, he did not recommend that we go that route for a full-time 24/7 cruiser. He did suggest that we consider a vehicle like that when we get into the vehicles where they're not used 24/7, that where there's some downtime for charging. There's not also, sorry, this cord is right under my feet. There's also not a lot of information and data available right now on how these electric cars handle the electric load of all the equipment that a police cruiser needs, and what the charging, I think that he said there was maybe one town in Vermont that's currently trying a Tesla model, and he's waiting to just get some more information on how that works out for them. So at this time, we're not proposing it, but it is something that we do talk about and look at in infrastructure. The rest of the proposals, we're asking the voters to approve the money right now. We're not looking at anything specific for that money. So if the voters approve the money, when we get to the point of purchasing, we will have a discussion about what equipment we will purchase for that money. And you're welcome to come to those meetings and participate in that conversation with us.
Other questions? Yes, Ross.
Hi, the 2005 dump truck that you're looking to replace, apparently it's served the town for 14 years about now. Why are we going to be going to a 7-year replacement cycle with new dump trucks?
So, is Bill here? Can he talk?
We authorized it.
So Bill, would you remind me, please, what we invested in our older equipment this year? That we approved and invested a significant amount of money in repairs and maintenance in our older fleet this year because we've extended the time for which we should replace them.
Bill Kernan.
And Bill might have those numbers in his head, and I don't.
I do not, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to put
But
you
for
on
the
the
last
spot.
couple of years, we've been well overspent in basically repairing breakdowns. And especially when it comes to a plow truck, we have 6 plows for 6 routes, and if one is down, we're not doing a route. So that gets into it too. Somewhere along the line, I think we used to be on roughly a 7-year replacement schedule. We got away from that, and we're seeing the cost of that, and we're trying to get back to it.
It's affecting the budget in our repair and maintenance costs. And if you look at the detail in that budget, you can see the uptick in the repairs and maintenance on the older vehicles.
Other questions? Victoria.
I need a little help understanding the equipment fund. As you look through the budget, the different departments, the taxes proposed to raise for the regular fund, 344,000 plus, and a reserve fund of 225,000 plus. And I don't know what's in those funds now, and if we're buying equipment with it, and then you say we're going to be borrowing, how does the money in those funds get used? It seems well over the 133,000 you're proposing. So I'm a little confused how this works.
I'm going to let Kathleen explain the.
Try to.
Yes.
Kathleen.
So the equipment fund, as you point out, has 2 pieces. One piece is the maintenance fund, which was the first number, was it $300,000 you mentioned? And the second piece is the reserve fund, which funds the debt service that we have on our existing equipment. And in this case, that $127,000 that's going, the $58,000 that's coming from the Public Works budget to offset the price of the new vehicle is in this year's equipment fund. So because we have held onto our equipment so long, we have more budgeted for highway equipment replacement than we have in debt service. So the difference between that and the appropriation is what's being used to offset the purchase of the plow truck.
Just wait for the mic, Victoria.
Why are we borrowing when we have more money than, and it seems like here's another good.
We're borrowing what we need to pay off we have to meet our debt service commitment. And then we've deducted whatever funds we have in reserve and minimized our borrowing that way.
Okay.
Other questions or discussion? Question is, shall Article 3 be adopted? Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 3. Article 4, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote to adopt the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2020, which is July 1st of 19 to June 30 of 20, in the amount of $11,155,400, with a portion thereof in the amount of $7,836,000 $854 to be raised by taxes. What's your pleasure regarding Article 4? Brian?
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 4 with a friendly amendment based upon the approval of Article 2, that the amount to be raised by taxes be $7,436,854.
And seconded by Heather. Brian has moved the adoption of Article 4 with the change that is indicated by the asterisk on the screen, which is to change the amount to be raised by taxes from 7.8 to 7.4 million. Kathleen?
Okay. With the use of the $400,000 of Cross Street Bridge Fund reserved, as approved in Article 2, the Select Board's FY 2020 budget proposes a modest 2.2% increase in property tax revenue due to necessary growth and expense line items that have been shaved to a minimum to maintain a level tax rate for the past 4 fiscal years. In the next few slides, I'll provide an overview of the general fund expenses and revenues, as well as major expense items driving the increase in the budget and items offsetting increased expenses. The FY20 expense chart includes operating expense line items plus employee benefits and capital improvements by department. Public Works, our largest department, $3 million expenses, or 27% of our budget. Police Department, $2.2 million total, or 20% of our budget. Fire Department, $337,000, or 3% of our budget. Libraries, $844,000, or 7%. Recreation and Parks, $677,000, or 6%. Administration, including land records, elections, finance, planning, zoning, $1.5 million, or 13%. This chart shows the breakdown of revenue sources, with most of our revenues, 67%, or $7.4 million, coming from the property taxes, $1.2 million, or 11%, from the college as contributions to the Cross Street Bridge and town offices and recreation building projects and its annual gift, $583,000, or 5.2%, for charges for services, primarily fees from recreation programs, library fees, land and vital record fees, $364,000, or 3.3%, as state and federal revenue, $325,000, or just under 3%, as town interfund revenue and school transfers, and $400,000, or 3.6%, from the Cross Street Bridge Fund reserve. Major budget drivers include inflationary increases in wages and benefits for current employees, $123,250, and the addition of 2 new positions for $126,000. The first new position that we have proposed is the accounting grants management position, which is proposed as a 3/4 full-time equivalent with benefits. The position, which addresses audit findings, will assist with the administration of $2.2 million in active grants and provide for additional segregation of duties in the accounting office. With the addition of this new position, the staffing of the accounting office remains smaller than other communities of similar size and complexity. $63,000 in wages and benefits is included in the FY20 budget. Our second new position included in the budget, the Adult Services and Circulation Assistant, is a 40-hour per week position at the Ilsley Library. The position was proposed in response to growing demand for adult programs and services and focuses on outreach and programming and will assist with circulation as well. The FY20 budget includes $40,000 a year in wages and $23,000 in benefits. Other major drivers include 266, 119 in increased spending for capital improvements, an increase of $32,000, $32,105 in equipment fund repair due to the increased cost of repairs of an aging fleet of vehicles and equipment, and an increase of $325,000 in payments for police department vehicle replacements or debt service. Offsetting these increased expenses include a combined decrease of $12,262,000 in debt service on police station, fire station, and town offices, increased administrative charges of $30,044 assessed to the water and sewer funds after the first comprehensive review of these charges in many years, and an estimated $40,000 increase in interest earned on investments, reflecting rising interest rates on deposit accounts. Health and Social Service Agency budget requests are on pages 19 and 20, and local and regional agency requests are on page 6 of the budget. As provided in the Select Board's policy on appropriations for nonprofit agencies, several agencies are featured each year on a 5-year rotating basis to highlight their work and the funding the town provides. This year's featured agencies are HOPE, RSVP, Addison County Readers, and the Otter Creek Natural Resources Conservation District. HOPE serves low-income Addison County residents with a variety of goods and services, including clothing, housing and heating fuel, medical items, job-related needs, and budget counseling. HOPE operates the largest food shelf in the county. In 2017, HOPE provided food for 70,299 meals and distributed over $30,000 of surplus farm produce. HOPE's funding request for FY20 is $7,960, the same as last year. RSVP, Retired Senior Volunteer Program, is a volunteer management program which offers individuals the opportunity to share their experience, skills, and time by volunteering for local nonprofit organizations. Volunteers meet needs in critical areas such as human services, healthcare, and education. In FY17, 117 Middlebury residents served the community by volunteering over 17,000 hours at area nonprofit organizations, helping community members stay healthy, engaged, and financially viable. RSVP requests funding in the amount of $2,050 from the town of Middlebury, the same as last year. Addison County Readers, Inc. is an entirely volunteer organization dedicated to promoting preschool literacy. It sponsors the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program, which mails free quality books monthly to the homes of registered children. The $30 annual cost of the program, which is open to any child from 0 to 5 residing in Addison County, is covered by the Addison County Readers. In September 2018, 208 Middlebury and East Middlebury children were enrolled in the program, and more than 2,500 books were shipped to Middlebury children last fiscal year. Addison County Readers request $2,000, the same as last year. Otter Creek Natural Resources Conservation District works in many ways to increase water quality in the Otter Creek and other Addison County watersheds. The district sells trees, plants trees along streams, helps funds repair of gully erosion, and construction of rain gardens and other water quality projects, including soil testing of farms and implementation of nutrient management plans. The Otter Creek NRCD requests $884,000 a year.
$884.
Oh, I'm sorry, $884. So people were paying attention. Okay. Okay, although I almost hesitate to go there, here we go, on the capital budget of $1.2 million. Just over $1 million is budgeted for public works projects, $89,500 for recreation and parks, $54,118 for the fire department for turnout gear, breathing apparatus, and communications equipment, $24,000 for police department capital expenses this year, including an energy efficiency improvement project, and the remaining $70,000 is allocated for library administrative IT equipment and special projects. While the actual FY20 tax rate will depend on the results of the grand list total after reappraisal, using last year's grand list, the total tax rate would increase 2.15 cents from just over 98 cents to just over $1. Looking ahead, while the Select Board presented a budget requiring only a modest increase in the budget again this year, keep in mind that increases in the following expenses: capital improvements, replacement of vehicles and equipment, health insurance, vehicle and heating fuel, mandates including the cleanup of Lake Champlain, and uncertainty of the future of state and federal funding will put significant upward pressure on budgets in FY20 and beyond. After that short presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Our department heads are available as well. Public Works and Parks and Recreation, Director of Operations Bill Kiernan is here. Capital Improvements, Public Works Planning Director Dan Werner is here. Public Safety, Police Chief Tom Hanley, and Fire Chief David Shaw. Libraries, Library Director Dana Hart. And I'll handle any general government questions and revenue questions you may have.
Questions on the budget? Mr. Silverman.
Thanks. I'll start by saying thank you to the board for the very hard work on budgeting and delivering a budget that's pretty level. It's really impressive. Thank you. About 15% of the budget is being spent this year on the police department. It's a very big part of the budget, and it's a big part every year. It's a big part of the capital improvement budget too. We're always spending money on new cruisers, and we all like public safety. We all want to be safe. Has the board done any analysis to determine whether our police budget is right-sized given our particular community aspects?
Heather?
I just wanted to comment quickly on the first thing you said, and I appreciate the thank you, but the board really could not do the hard work of budgeting without the staff that we have, and we're very fortunate in Middlebury to have great department heads and great staff, and they really do a large share of that hard work, and I just want to recognize them and thank them also for their hard work.
Kathleen?
David, I haven't done any recent benchmarking. Tom Hanley, our police chief, is here. I don't know if you have a comment to that.
Chief Hanley?
I've been silent. We're comparable in size, a little bit smaller than Milton, about the same size as Newport. They've got one or two more officers than we do. Milton's got 3 more than we do. They have much larger clerical staffs. We have 1 clerical person. So we don't compare to people our size. St. Johnsbury is bigger than us with more clerical people. We have 1 clerical person and 15 police officers, and that's the police department. And when you stretch those numbers out over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that results in usually 2 officers on duty at any one time. So and we have an investigator, and then there's a school resource officer, which is offset by the supervisory district pays 80%, 85% of that cost. And that's about it. It really is kind of thin sometimes, and especially when we have incidents like last year where we lost an officer for the year due to injuries in an accident. That's when those thin numbers really start to show. So at no time have I ever felt that we've had too many people, that's for sure.
Marilyn? Wait for the mic.
Sorry. This is my first year in Middlebury, and we did not have a police department in Starksboro. So, also, I'd like to ask about the overtime in the police budget. It's about $160,000, and I don't understand. Perhaps the chief could explain what is entailed.
Chief?
Nobody likes overtime, especially the people that are compelled to work it. As I said, this past year we had 3 officers out with extensive injuries. 2 of them required extensive surgery, so they were gone. Somebody has to fill that position. And they already work 40 hours a week, and most of them now are working usually upwards of 56, 60 some odd hours a week. And that's overtime. That's to keep people on the road. Officers that get banged up, they're not there, so they have to be replaced. Their only option is to work overtime, and believe me, none of them like to work it. This is not something they volunteer for. So that's where those numbers come from. And then when we have a vacancy, in other words, if somebody leaves the department and we have a vacancy like we're going to have in a couple of weeks, usually takes me about a year to fill that vacancy. So that's a year's worth of a position that's gone. And since we are running 24/7, we have to keep people on the road. I couldn't put a placard up on the door and say closed these hours or we're not going to come into work this day. I've got to have people here 24/7. We do get calls round the clock, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, all kinds of different things, mental health, whatever it is. There's a lot of things going on, so we need people here.
Other questions? Or discussion on the budget? Oh, Roger?
With all the talk in the news about Medicare for all, if that was to come about and the federal government took on the responsibility of health insurance, what is our total health insurance contribution paid for with tax dollars? Thanks.
Kathleen?
Okay, on page 27, line item 1067, medical insurance, 604,000.
RJ?
On line item 294, electricity town offices, it looks like we saved $18,000 on electricity from the FY19 budget to the FY 2020 budget, and I just want to know if that can happen for everybody's house.
So, bad news on that, it really wasn't a savings. As part of the recreation and town offices project, we had initially budgeted for electricity for both buildings under the municipal building line item. And we just this year were transferring that over to the recreation. So you'll see most of that $18,000 over the recreation budget.
Easy come, easy go. Victoria?
Couple of questions. In light of that, when the new town office was constructed, it was, I believe, planned for future solar panels, and I'm wondering whether we should be looking at whether it's time to do that, given the move towards being more energy efficient and alternative renewables, and then figuring out the cost payback would be on that. So I'm just putting that out there as an idea. But the other thing, I was in line 153, the interest in income. It's been the last 2 years over $100,000, and you did increase the budget this year, but why only halfway?
Kathleen?
So, anticipating that question from you, Victoria, tonight, I talked to the treasurer about that earlier this afternoon, and the figures in your town report do not reflect an allocation between their different funds, the water, the sewer, and the general fund, and in order to, and the share of the general fund interest is about that $50,000. So these numbers include interest earned by other funds that was in our general fund on deposit at the bank. Just hadn't been allocated yet.
Yes.
Bobby Loney. I was really glad to see that another librarian is being hired, and yet when I hear about the police department, I wonder why we are so stretched thin there, and whether you've discussed that or what's happening in the future.
Chief, coming up. One behind you. Got to look over your shoulder.
My job, you do that a lot.
Sorry.
No, we're very conservative with our understanding, with our staff, because we know what the stress on taxes. I live here. I'm amongst you here now. I get my tax bill every year. I know what it costs. So we try to make do with what we have. I mean, we could use more clerical help, because that means officers aren't doing what they're supposed to do on the street because they're in the building. Everybody talks these days about body cameras and different videos. We can't go to body cameras. I have nobody to manage the data, period, the end. It requires somebody full-time to be managing that kind of data. So there are things we don't do because of our staff. We are primarily a first response agency, and we do our own criminal investigations, and we do pretty good at that. But it's such a time, if there's enough economic viability to consider looking at changing the size of the department or the employee staff that we have, then we'll do it. But until then, we try to do the best we can with what we have. And we do have officers injured right now. That's not something we can predict. That's not something we want. When we've got everybody back, things are quite a bit different. So hopefully that answered your question. We do. We look at census data. We do everything. We do try to forecast out 20 years at a time when we're looking at staffing. You know, we went from 11 to 15. That included the school resource officer over the past 30 years. So we have made some changes. Is that my cue to get off the mic, Doug? Anyway, that's it. I mean, we look at the future and do the best we can.
Other questions on the budget? Other discussion? Yes, sir.
I'm Tim Wright. Question on the budget. So one of the line items there, one of the pieces of the pie graph is the debt servicing, and we're almost $1 million a year servicing debts or making debt payments. Are there any plans to reduce that as time moves forward? Because that's a significant percentage of the budget just to service money we've already borrowed.
So when the town issues bonds, it's typically for a 20-year period, 30 years in the case of the Cross Street Bridge. And unfortunately, we can't prepay those. You have to pay out over the projected life of the bond. And we have to bring any future bond questions to you with a disclosure of what our existing debt service is.
Other questions? Discussion? Question, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, sorry.
Kathy Wheatley, does that mean that every year we're going to have more? Is that just going to go up all the time, the debt service? We're always going to keep borrowing more?
Actually, over the life of the bond, the interest decreases on it, so it should be decreasing over time, lest we issue new bonds.
But do we expect to always bond more things all the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions? Yes. Yep.
What is the interest rate we pay in Middlebury based on? Do we piggyback on the state rates? And if not, what rate do we pay? Thank you.
Is that a question on bond rates? Yeah, about 3%. So municipalities issue bonds as a group, and so it's whatever the market will bear at the time that the bonds are issued. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Other questions? More discussion? The question is, shall Article 4 be adopted as presented, which is the asterisk figure of $400,000 less than was warned? Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 4 as presented. Article 5, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote to collect taxes on real property for fiscal year 2019 and 20 in 2 equal installments due in the Treasurer's office on the 15th day of October 2019 and the 15th day of March 2020. What's your pleasure regarding Article 5? Heather moves adoption of the article. Laura seconds. Discussion on Article 5. Yes. The other side, Kevin.
Oh, I just wanted to hear more on the rationale of this. It seems to me it'll be harder for people with less money to come up with two large payments instead of 3 payments.
Yeah, let's get your name for the...
Alice Eccles.
Oh, Alice.
Alice, this is due to the reappraisal that's currently going on. We expect to have property values published in June, with an opportunity for people to review those and grieve them if they'd like to. So the grand list won't be finalized till August. And this will give us time to prepare the tax bills. As you may recall, our typical tax due dates are April 15th, November 15th, and March 15th. This year, in order to meet August 15th deadline, we would need to issue those tax bills by July 15th, and that's not doable this year with the schedule for the reappraisal. If you think that you will have difficulty making 2 installments, you can always set up a payment plan with Treasurer Jackie Sullivan.
Is this just for this 1 year, or is this ongoing that we're asking for the vote?
We'll come back to you with a request.
Okay, so this is just for this
We do
year.
this every year.
Okay.
Jackie, did you want to? Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, this is just for the coming fiscal year. Other questions or debate on Article 5? If not, are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor of adopting Article 5 signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You've adopted Article 5. Article 6, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote pursuant to 32 VSA Section 1674 to set the penalty charged by the collector of delinquent taxes for delinquent tax payments as follows. No penalty for any balance paid by the due date for the final installment, a 1% penalty on any balance not paid by the due date for the final installment, and an additional 7% penalty on any balance not paid within 10 days of the due date of the final installment. Interest will continue to be charged on each installment not paid by the due date at the rates previously approved by the town at the March 2016 town meeting, that is 1% per month or fraction thereof for the first 3 months, and thereafter 1.5% per month for each month or fraction thereof. What's your pleasure regarding Article 6? Farhad moves its adoption. Is there a seconded by Brian? Discussion on Article 6. If not, are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor of adopting Article 6 signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 6. Article 7, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury authorize the Select Board pursuant to 24 VSA Section 1786A sub B to borrow funds to finance improvements to the Memorial Sports Center in an amount not to exceed $100,000 to be financed over a period not to exceed 5 years. What's your pleasure regarding Article 7, Heather?
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion.
Or offer a different
different
motion? Yeah, go for it.
In consultation with Friends of Middlebury Hockey, the National Bank of Middlebury, and Bond Council, I'd like to move that the voters of the town of Middlebury authorize the Select Board to borrow a sum not to exceed $100,000, payable over an initial term of 5 years, subject to refunding at maturity, for the purpose of financing improvements at the Memorial Sports Center.
Second? Seconded by Brian. Question is, shall Article 7 be adopted as presented by Heather, which is the text on the screen, a slightly different version from what has been warned? And we have Mike McAuliffe here, who's the president of the Friends of Middlebury Hockey, who will speak to us, if you would like, Mike, and we'll see what questions the voters may have.
Hello, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Mike McAuliffe. I'm president of Friends of Middlebury Hockey. I've served in that role for just over 2 years now. And with me tonight's Rick Marshall, who preceded me as president of Friends of Middlebury Hockey. He served in that role for about 12 years, and he's manager of this facility now. Would you like me to step through the slides? Okay. So we've looked at this one. If this is approved, the town would support Friends of Middlebury Hockey borrowing up to $100,000 from National Bank of Middlebury to fund the completion of the second floor project at Memorial Sports Center. The existing loan that we took out in exactly this same manner in 2008 that paid for the initial expansion project that created the locker rooms, the wish showers, and the second floor space that we're now looking to complete. This would allow us to extend that debt service by an additional 5 years. Extending that original debt service lets us save enough money each year that we would end up with a lower overall payment combining that original debt and this new debt that we're asking to take out. The note would be initially a 5-year note. We're working with the bank to amortize that over 15 years. At the end of that 5-year term, there'd be a blue payment due, and we would work with the bank at that time to evaluate where we're at with the revenue stream that we have coming in at Memorial Sports Center and assign a respectable date for the repayment. This is not a request to the town for any of you to pay for the work being done at Memorial Sports Center. This is a loan that would be paid back by Friends of Middlebury Hockey. The improvements at the Sports Center, And all of this is part of the original scope of work that we had started back in 2008. Would include accessible public restrooms in that second floor space, an elevator to provide equal accommodations and access for all members of our community who want to come out to enjoy an event there. A heated viewing area on the second floor with floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooks the playing surface. An improved concession area. A meeting room that would be available for team use or for community use for different community groups that we work with, and an on-site manager's office to provide more timely response and better oversight of what's happening in the facility. The total estimated cost is $350,000 to finish this work in Memorial Sports Center. We are in the throes of a 2-year fundraising project. To this point, we've raised, as of our last accounting, almost $270,000 in pledges from the Addison County community. The largest number of donations are small donations that have come from families. We've had over 300 different donating partners to this point. Most of those donations are between $50 up to just under $1,000 from local families. We've also had very generous gifts from local service organizations and many small businesses here in Middlebury. I welcome any questions.
Questions of Mike? RJ?
I can talk loud.
This is awesome. Go hockey. Question, previously I was employed by a solar energy company, so I pay attention to big south-facing roofs. I know that Memorial Sports Center at some time in the past, before I was paying attention to Middlebury town politics, was looked at for solar, but I believe that the roof was determined to be not structurally sound enough. I don't know if the project that you're proposing is going to support the roof such that maybe the town could then look into investing in solar for the town or putting solar on that roof, already used property in the middle of town, that kind of thing, or the sports center. I know that this is not a simple question, but I guess, solar isn't a simple question, but are roof improvements such that solar could be possible on that large south-facing roof in the middle of town possible?
That's a great question, and solar on that building is that's a conversation we've been having within Friends of Middlebury Hockey over the past 2 years. The short answer is the town owns the building, and with the way that the roof was constructed originally, it is not set up to support the weight of a solar installation. When the roof comes due for replacement, that would be a question for the town to answer, as opposed to Friends of Middlebury Hockey. So,
when is the roof due for replacement?
We have $1,000 in this year's current capital budget for an evaluation of the roof to figure that out, but soon.
Great.
And
not great.
If it helps, I'd love to see solar up there. And
me too.
If I have an opportunity to sway anyone's mind, I would be in support of it.
Yeah, we should have a conversation about this, not in front of the town.
2 brothers after the meeting. Okay.
Ann?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, 2. Okay.
Well, Ann, go ahead.
Ann LaFiandra. I'm a former board member of Friends of Middlebury Hockey. All 3 of my children played, and my daughter and I still play. It's a wonderful sport. It's a fabulous facility. Not a single dollar of taxpayer money has gone into this facility. However, an additional benefit to finishing this upstairs space is that this fabulous facility might be utilized more when it's not hockey season. all hockey players mourn the end of hockey season, but it's coming. And then the building sits relatively unused. So an investment in finishing that space will hopefully enable more use of that building. Thank you.
And if I may piggyback on what you just said, Memorial Sports Center currently hosts high school graduation every year. We're a rainy day venue for Woofstock. We work with Middlebury Parks and Rec, and we have Camp Cucamonga in there throughout the summer, so the kids aren't out in the sun all day long. And we've been aggressively pursuing opportunities to bring more summertime and early fall activities into Memorial Sports Center. We're working to finalize an agreement to bring an arena football team here to Middlebury that would have Memorial as its home facility. And that would bring up to 12 to 13 weeks, depending on whether or not they can get any playoff games, of new revenue into the town. And having that second floor space, particularly a space that would offer public restrooms so that people don't have to leave the building to go to the pool house in any kind of wonderful weather Vermont likes to give us, would really help us be more competitive in those bids. Thank you.
Laura?
That was going to be my question, and especially the access to public restrooms being a critical need for that Middlebury Rec Park in general. And could you see access to those restrooms occurring even if there weren't scheduled events in there? For example, if there were soccer games going on as another option for public restrooms.
I know that we work to have an annual meeting between Rick, myself, Kathleen, and Dustin Hunt, and about the use of Memorial Sports Center and how we are a component of all of the offerings that happen over by Mary Hogan. I think it'd be perfectly reasonable to put that on the table and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Poppy Reese. I'm not sure that this is a question exactly or just a request, but I think it would be great if there were a way to make skating, not hockey, although hockey also, but skating available to more low-income families. Because right now there's really very little free skating. And I understand why. I mean, the taxpayers aren't, we're not funding it, right? So you've got to make it work. But I do think it limits who comes and skates. I mean, I know that it does from knowing families and knowing kids. So I guess I would just put that out there, that I wish there were more of a relationship with the rec park and skating, because through the rec park you can get scholarships. But I don't know, I'm sorry about this, I don't know that you can get that with skating at all. And hockey is obviously really expensive to do, so that limits who does hockey too.
On that note, you might be interested, I don't know what age group kids you're looking at. We had worked and offered a program, DJ Skate Night. We're working on bringing that back for next year. So that will up some opportunities there. I don't know which mic we're getting feedback off of, but there's one close. So we're working on that. There are public skating sessions throughout the week, but the times are limited, and sometimes they're not the greatest times. Yes. Yeah, there is a fee for those. So let's talk more. Okay, I'd like to hear your ideas. So.
Frank.
Frank Winkler. I think you said that you were anticipated getting a loan from the National Bank. Is that right?
That's what we're working towards. Yes, sir.
And at roughly what interest rate do you expect?
The reason why we're here tonight is so that we can borrow at the municipal rate, which I believe from our conversation with Megan was prime plus a quarter. Yeah.
Somewhere between 3 and 4 right now.
Yeah, I think the last quote we had from them was somewhere between 3.25 and 3.5, borrowing at the municipal rate.
So it would be a rate that it would be comparable to the rates that you would get through the Vermont bond bank that the town borrows at?
Well, yes, sir. Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, that was my question, is whether this would be at a commercial rate or at a municipal rate.
At the municipal rate, and that's absolutely why we're doing it this way. If we had to borrow at the commercial rate, we wouldn't be able to do this. So.
Mr. Silverman.
This is a very simple question, I hope. Can someone please explain the difference between the question as warned and the question as presented here? I don't really understand the substance of the change.
Kathleen. You may want to go back to slide 41, Chris, so we can see the text.
So the difference between this is very slight difference advised to us by council. Since the Friends of Middlebury Hockey is looking to amortize over a 15-year term, there will be a need to extend this loan, and this was a measure of full disclosure. The only real difference in the article is the caveat that it will be subject to refunding at the end of the 5-year term. The initial article did not have that clause at the end of it.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Tony Nemo, Middlebury. Hockey is not that expensive here in Middlebury because of Friends of Middlebury Hockey. I'm a board member for Middlebury Amateur Hockey Association. I've been doing the equipment for them for over 10 years. For the skating and for kids that want to do, or anyone who wants to do public skate, there is options for people to get scholarships, and there's organizations in the community that do help fund people to go skating. And if you were to do a little research, or anyone wanted to do research on, there is people like me that would help you get skates or helmets or things to go skating. And yeah, and then just to verify, the taxpayers pay nothing for the rink. We pay it all through contributions, and then I believe, yeah, I just want to considerate that there is ways to get to skate that won't be costing you any money if you need to be. There is scholarship funds, and hockey doesn't need to be that expensive. Thanks.
We didn't catch your name, sir, for the record. Tony Nemo. Other questions? Laura.
So the Sports Center is an incredible resource for our community, and it can be all season, as you said. It's also electric intensive, so I really do see the value of eventually getting solar on that roof to offset the electric. Adding an elevator is going to increase your electric load, and we see the spike in electric bills when we're reviewing electric bills, you know, from creating the ice. And there are other options for bringing down that cost. There's other technology. Have you considered some other technologies for making the ice that could bring your electric costs down?
So the question on technologies for bringing down the cost for making the ice, Rick on that one, but we didn't ask. So in terms of other technologies we might be able to use other than solar, we have not started investigating that. We've been all hands on deck for this, unfortunately. And until we know how we fare this evening, we're not in a position to really start taking steps towards other projects. So, but I'd love to talk to you and get ideas. So.
Jim Swift.
Jim Swift. I was on the Friends of Middlebury Hockey Board for many years and helped spearhead the last go-round of fundraising in 2008. And there's been lots and lots of effort put into economizing on electricity, everything from putting in a dehumidifying system that cuts down on the amount of electricity and propane needed to keep the ice cool. The lighting has been upgraded. tremendously to cut down the cost on that. I think that in the future, we've talked for at least a dozen years, about doing solar panels, and we'd love to do it if we ever can do it structurally. But there have been, over the 15, 20 years that I've been involved, lots and lots of effort put into economizing on electricity, because not only does it good for the environment, but guess what? Cuts down on the costs of operation. And that's a commitment that I've seen throughout the history of the organization. I think it'll continue. Thank you.
Linda Horn?
That go off? No. I'd like to call the question.
Linda Horn calls the question. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by RJ. All in favor of closing debate on Article 7, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you've closed debate. Question now is, shall Article 7 be adopted as presented, which is the revised text on the screen? All in favor of adopting Article 7 as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 7. Article 8, to transact other business proper to be done. We've got a number of announcements, and let me start with Senator Hardy, who's here, and she has an important presentation. Yeah, come on down here.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ruth Hardy. I'm your state senator, and I'm really bummed that I'm not giving you a school budget presentation this year. I really miss doing that. Am I in the way? Okay. But I am here in my capacity as your state senator and a member of the Senate Agriculture Committee to read a resolution in honor of the Foster Brothers Farm in Middlebury. Back up, I'm too close to the mic. The Foster Brothers Farm, as many of you know, is a very successful and long-standing farm, and the Fosters are deeply rooted members of our community. In fact, are there any Fosters here tonight?
Oh, yes.
Yay, yay, yay. Well, this is in honor of your farm and your family. So this was presented to is a joint resolution of the House, the Vermont House and the Vermont Senate. And it reads, a House concurrent resolution congratulating the Foster Brother Farm of Addison County on being named the 2019 Innovative Dairy Farm of the Year. Offered by Representative Harvey Smith of New Haven, Representative Terry Norris of Shoreham, Representative Robin Shy of Middlebury, and Amy Sheldon of Middlebury, and Senators Ruth Hardy and Chris Bray of Addison County. Whereas annually, the International Dairy Foods Association and Dairy Herd Management magazine name an Innovative Dairy Farm of the Year, and whereas the award's 21st year, the judges look for progressive U.S. dairy farmers who have employed new technology and welcome industry partnerships to promote greater productivity, embrace sustainable practices, educate consumers, and explore new paths to growth. And whereas Robert Foster and his family's Foster Brothers Farm, located in Addison County, were selected as the 2019 Innovative Dairy Farmer of the Year, the first Vermont and New England dairy farm to be so honored. Yes. This is a big deal. George and Luella Chaffee founded Foster Brother Farms in the 1930s, and following a devastating fire in 1957, their grandsons Howard, Ben, and George and their spouses constructed a new barn. And in 1964, the next generation, Robert, Jim, George Jr., and Theodore, built a freestall barn with a double 8 parlor. And the dairy farm was updated in 1972 and operated until the winter of 2018 on a 23-hour per day basis. And in March 2018, a magnificent new barn, a 475-cow palace. It's really cool, I've been there. With 8 robotic milkers, freestall water beds, rubber mats, and cow brushes that are all climate controlled with a distinctive ventilation system was inaugurated. And IDFA CEO and President Michael Dykes were extremely impressed with the farm's innovative technology applications. And as the first Vermont operator of a methane digester, Foster Brother Farms is committed to sustainable farming practices. And since 1992, the family has also operated Vermont Natural Ag Products, Inc., a producer and marketer of soil products derived from composted manure and other agricultural residuals. Whereas still the family farm operated Foster Brothers Farm is proud of its record of success as a practitioner of sustainable agriculture. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives that the General Assembly congratulate the Foster Brothers Farm of Addison County on being named the 2019 Innovative Dairy Farmer of the Year. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Tricia, Nikki, come on down.
Also add, since I wasn't here when Nick gave such a lovely, I heard it was a great speech about Governor Douglas, and I just want to add my own thanks and appreciation for all the years that he's been our moderator. I love town meeting. This is my 6th town meeting this year, in fact, and I just have to say Cornwall is a lot more efficient than Middlebury. They were done in like 40 minutes.
Well, they're less deliberative.
But this was a lot more fun. So anyway, thanks, Governor Douglas, and I have a little gift for you, too. And
dear.
Thanks to everyone for being a great town.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. Well, thanks. And congratulations, Nikki and Tricia Foster here from Foster Brothers Farm. It's a great institution and employer and steward of the land in our community. Well, moving on to other items, we traditionally invite those who are running for office to introduce themselves, those who will be on the ballot tomorrow, and so this would be an appropriate time if you'd like to say hello to the folks who are here. Heather?
I'm Catherine Nichols. I'm running for the Ilsley Library Board, and I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
I'm James Malcolm. I'm incumbent on the Addison Central Addison Central School District. We have to get used to that. And I'm running for another 3-year term, and I would like your vote also. Thank you.
I'm Heather Seeley, and also up for another 3-year term on the Select Board, and even though there isn't much competition this year, I do hope that you will vote for me. Thank you.
My name is Betty Kafumbe, and I am running for Addison County School District Union Board member, and I would like your vote.
And hi, I'm Ryan Torres. I'm also running for ACSD School Board, and I would also love your vote. Thank you.
And I guess you know I'm Nick Ardham from my little bit of a talk here earlier. I sit here and it's hard to believe it's been 3 years since the last time I was up for re-election. So if time flies when we're having fun, I guess I'm having a real blast. It actually is, well, it's not always fun, but it's always worthwhile, and it's an honor to be a part of this board, and I'm hoping my other board members say the same thing about me, and Kathleen does, but no, okay. But just the same, I'm up for another 3 years, and so if you so choose, I honor and appreciate your vote.
Hi, I'm Susan Shashak, candidate for town moderator.
Yay.
And contrary to popular belief, Jim does not have the power to just pass it over to me. So you do need to vote for me tomorrow, and I would really appreciate it if you do. Thank you.
Victor.
I'm Victor Nuovo. I'm running for re-election to the Select Board. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve on the Select Board in the past, and I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Steve?
Hello, Steve Warzek. I am also on the ACSD School Board. I'm an incumbent, and I'd like to ask for your vote as well.
Lorraine?
Hi, I'll round out the 5. My name's Lorraine Morse. I've been serving on your boards for a while now, and I would welcome the opportunity to continue serving you as an incumbent, and I would ask for your vote tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, and good luck to everybody. Let's turn to the articles that we'll be voting on tomorrow, somewhat out of order to accommodate a schedule. Let's look at Article 12 first, which is, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury advise and encourage the Select Board to enact an ordinance that no retail establishment shall provide a single-use carry-out plastic bag, defined as a bag with a thickness of less than 4 mils, to a customer at the check stand, cash register, point of sale, or other point of departure for the purpose of transporting food, merchandise out of the establishment. I know there are some folks who'd like to speak to that, so take it away.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? All right. My name is Amelia Miller. I'm a Middlebury College student and resident, and I'm here with Amy McNage, Gain Murphy, and Molly Babbitt to talk about this ordinance. And I also have to thank Maggie Eden, who cannot be here, but she did a lot for this. So I just want to take a couple minutes to give a rundown of what this ordinance would do and why we have brought it to everybody's attention tonight. So if you look at the screen on the left side, you'll see the bags that we are proposing to have banned, single-use ones that you get when you check out. On the right are ones that would not be banned but have now been made recyclable, not in your blue bin, but if you bring them to the Addison County transfer station. So just again, we're going to ban the ones shown on the left that you get at the checkout that are single-use. So I know there are a lot of numbers. I'm a number person. We're also going to have pictures, so hopefully one of those resonates with you. But we brought this today because we just use an exorbitant amount of plastic bags. So in the use alone, in 2009, it's estimated that we used 100 billion, and that number is expected to actually be higher since it's now 10 years later. And these bags are really only used for about 12 minutes, and very few of them get recycled. Additionally, they contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, and it's estimated that 1.6 billion gallons of oil were used for the US plastic bags each year. Additionally, there's this idea that plastic bags are free. You go to a store, they give it to you, you don't have to pay. But this is a rather big misconception. US retailers spend about $4 billion a year on plastic bags, and that cost is actually passed on to the taxpayer. So San Francisco did a rather extensive study, and they found that roughly the residents and taxpayers were paying about 17 cents per bag that went to cleanup efforts to take care of all the harmful effects that these bags have. So additionally, once you get a bag, it most often doesn't end up in the landfill and it doesn't get recycled. What happens is these are very lightweight. So they fly through the air, they end up on trees, they end up in our riverways, and then they end up in the ocean. And it's estimated that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than there will be fish. Because a lot of this plastic, it gets into the ocean and it forms, I'm sure many of us heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And it's just plastic and plastic and plastic. And then you'll see that about 8 million metric tons of plastic end up in the ocean every single year. So what happens is these plastic bags not only go in the ocean and they pollute or in our waterways, they also kill creatures. Animals confuse plastic bags with food. And this isn't just in the ocean, but it's also land creatures. So what happens is they see a plastic bag, they think it's food, they eat it. And the plastic sits in their stomach because they don't break it down. The animals think that they're full, but they're not getting any nutrients, so they starve. So you'll see if there's a picture of a sperm whale, and they starve and they end up on the coast, and they cut up their stomachs and they find hundreds and hundreds of plastic bags. And this happens to birds too. And also, you'll see in the middle picture, it's a little hard to tell, that was a picture taken off the coast of Monterey, California. And it's a picture of a mother seal trying desperately to get this plastic bag off of its baby seal's head. So they're They're drowning, they're struggling. The woman that took the picture said they were screaming and crying and they were exhausted from this effort. And in this case, the mother seal got the plastic bag off, but the plastic bag, one, remains in the water to harm another animal, and then you also don't know how much of a toll this exhaustion took on the animal. So plastic bags are not biodegradable. So what happens is they sit in water and they break down to these really tiny microplastics. They're really small, like less than 1 millimeter a piece, and it's very hard for us to see them, but fish confuse them for food. So they eat them and they biomagnificate in the fish, and then we eat the fish. So what happens is you have these studies that find that, there was one done in Europe that found that the average shellfish consumer ate 11,000 pieces of plastic every single year. There was a study done in the US that found that 25% of fish contained microplastics, and these microplastics sit in the water and they absorb toxins. So not only are you eating the plastic, you're eating the toxins that they absorbed. Additionally, a lot of times we think that this is an issue for the oceans, because we think that's where the plastic ends up, but there was a study done by a chemistry professor in Lake Champlain that found microplastics are in there too, and they're also in our tap waters. So 94% of our tap waters have plastic, and 90% of bottled water has plastic as well. So because of everything I just told you, a lot of places around the globe have decided to do something. You have over 30 countries have done bans or taxes, and in Ireland they found it to be 90% effective. We have 2 states that have banned it in the US, California and Hawaii, and in San Jose, California, rather quickly they saw a 60% reduction in plastic bag use and 89% reduction in plastic bags in their storm drains. We tried to show how many cities around the country have done it, but every time we go to check, more and more cities have decided to ban it. Massachusetts alone has 87 cities that have decided to ban plastic bags. So in Vermont, we have Brattleboro, which is rather close. They recently implemented their plastic bag ban last June or July, and there are a number of other towns that have now started efforts to do it. And the reason this is important is because we talked to Senator Bray, and he said, we've had 2 laws that have been presented at the state level, but they got stuck because they want to see towns show their support first. So it's important that we as a town say this is something that's important so that it's passed on to the state level. So in Middlebury, with a population around 8,500, if we decided to ban plastic bags, we would reduce our use of plastic bags by 4.6 million bags each year. And that would also mean eliminating 120 metric tons of greenhouse gases, and it would save retailers 182,000. So these numbers are based off of massgreen.org. It's a coalition of people in Massachusetts to help towns with plastic bag bans. So their averages the average of 4.6 million, that's based on an average of about 500 bags per person per year. So I think as Vermont, and specifically Middlebury, we probably do better than that, but even if you take 1 million bags off of that, that's still well over 3 million plastic bags used every year. So ultimately, we've decided this is just too much, and the effects are just too much. So we're presenting this to you to hopefully get a response from our environmentally and responsible concerned citizens. So we thank you for listening, and we hope that you come out and vote for yes for Article 12 tomorrow. Thank you.
Are there comments on Article 12? What? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. In the corner. Wait for the mic.
My name is Elizabeth Miska. I'm from Middlebury, and I am definitely for this ban. I actually worked with sea turtles in Florida at the turtle hospital down there and saw firsthand how these plastic bags can do so much damage to the ocean and to our creatures out there, not only through consumption and causing them to come in with the plastic bags in their intestines, but also wrapped around their flippers and their head and their necks. And it really caused a lot of problems. And I really think it's really, really important that we as a community work on getting rid of plastic bags and using reusable bags to help save the environment.
Other comments on Article 12? Oh, yes, right next to you.
My name is Yuda Miska, and I wholeheartedly agree with what my daughter is saying.
A little closer,
Of course.
Yuda.
As a shopper in Middlebury, I also find that if you use reusable bags, you can fit much more in. They are more sturdier and much more capable of carrying more items. As a shop owner in Middlebury, I find very many creative ways of alternatives for plastic bags. You know, we make T-shirt bags, we have cloth bags, and reusable. We reuse paper bags. And as a mother, I would like to be a good role model to our children and leave this world with a little bit a cleaner space.
Yes, Jim. Or Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam Guarnacha from Middlebury, and I would love to thank you for that fabulous, and everyone who worked on that presentation, fantastic. Try to bring back to your mind some of the pictures that were up there of the beach littered with plastic. India was one of the countries on the list of countries that are banning plastic bags. And Paula and I just returned from India, where we were on a musical creative mission, but got to be in 3 different cities and talk with a lot of people. And I can tell you that the entire countryside and every city street looks like those pictures. This is a country that in the last few decades has gone from everything that was thrown out used to be biodegradable. And even though there are no plastic bags in use anymore, the rivers, every street, every roadside is just, not just a few, but thick, piled thick with accumulated plastic. So it is, for them in this environment, I mean, it was really shocking. The most lovely, warm-hearted, welcoming people I have ever met in my life, but the conditions are really indescribable. So really, there is no choice, and it needs to, I'm in some senses incensed by the fact that we need to wait for large-scale movements for small towns to take the lead, which I think is really great to do that, but I think we need to work from the top down too. We don't have a lot of time to fix this and all of the other convergence of crises in the world. And so we need to work bottom up and top down, so you know what to do. Thank you.
Other comments on Article 12? Oh, Laura.
I just want to thank the presenters also, and that they are also sending us a message to bring our reusable bags, and they're creating reusable bags, which they'll be donating to us tomorrow at the polls, actually. And speaking of polls, there is a, can I make this transition?
Go for it.
Okay, so there is a town meeting poll for you to complete, and last year at the town meeting poll, you told us actually that you were ready to support the ban of plastic bags. 60% of you that responded to the poll said, yes, we're ready. So now we're ready to get into the details of that if you do pass this article tomorrow. So I just encourage you to complete the town meeting poll. It's as you exit, you can grab it and take it home if you want and bring it back tomorrow, or you can fill it out at the polls if you haven't already. There's also a legislative poll from our state representatives. So there are 2 polls for you to complete, and we look forward to your responses. It really does inform us. I mean, the feedback we got to come back here was in part because of what you told us on those polls. So please complete them. Thank you.
Any other comments on Article 12? Voter status?
A law can do a lot to help further destroying the land, the ocean, and its animals. And yet, it seems important to go beyond this possible law and look at personal responsibility. A container that I bought in the 60s, and the guarantee said it would last a lifetime. It has. It's been in continuous use ever. Our accountability goes beyond the law. When we look into our trash cans, waste baskets, and drawers, we can see exactly how we are contributing to the problem. A law forbidding single-use plastic can only go so far. I hope that considering this law will raise awareness of possibilities for changing our old use in all areas of plastic. This is an opportunity to see what each of us can do to be a part of saving the land and its beings, along with the ocean and its life.
Other comments on Article 12? Yes, Elizabeth? What? Well, it's only discussion, so there's no pending question, but I want to make sure if no one else wants to speak. Yes, sir. Kevin?
I'm Steve Gross, Middlebury. I believe that this is almost a no-brainer, and it's wonderful, and thank you all so much for what you put together. It's terrific. I think it'd be wonderful if we pass this tomorrow as the town of Middlebury. I hope we do. However, I think there's a limited functionality to our having town by town pass this. I understand it's part of the process. I would look to our state leaders to take the bull very quickly and make this a state law.
Anything else on this article? Let's move our way back on the warning tomorrow. Article 11 reads, shall the town appropriate $3,000 to Habitat for Humanity of Addison County to support the provision of affordable housing in Addison County? Any comments on Article 11? Muffin.
Margaret Carruthers. I was a founding member with my husband of the original board of Habitat for Humanity here in Addison County. We have built 2 houses in Bristol, 4 in Middlebury, 4 in Cornwall. We'll build 2 more in Middlebury on Seymour Street, and then we're going to move to Vergennes and build 4 houses there. We have that land. We don't give the houses away. We sell them for what it cost us, but we charge no interest on the mortgage. There are 10 families safely and warmly and happily housed here in Middlebury, thanks to all the volunteers who have not only pounded nails, but donated to this cause, and we would appreciate the help of the town of Middlebury. Cornwall and Bristol. Cornwall already supports us. Bristol has got this same thing on their ballot this year, and we would appreciate the support and the volunteering from everybody. Thank you.
Other comments on Article 11? Well, if not, Articles 9 and 10 are related, so we can discuss them simultaneously, I think. On 11, Jack, or? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, 9 and 10, yeah, okay. Well, maybe in the interest of time, I won't read the text because they're fairly lengthy. They relate to the 350 VT climate solutions resolutions, both at the state and the local level. Dr. Mayer.
Thank you. So back in the early 80s, I was a young physician. I'm practicing on the Canadian border in Enosburg Falls and Richford. And an 8-year-old boy walked into my office with flu-like symptoms and a bizarre rash. And I finally was able to identify that as Lyme disease. The only perplexing thing for me was that there was no Lyme disease in Vermont at that time. It was not even a reportable disease by the Department of Health. This kid was the canary in the coal mine. In 1991, the Vermont Health Department recorded 7 cases of Lyme in Vermont. In 2017, 25 years later, 1,092 cases in Vermont. I would venture to say that probably everybody in this auditorium either has had or knows somebody who has had Lyme disease. So this is a disease of climate change. it is only one of several that we're experiencing in Vermont now, partially by the extension of ticks and mosquitoes as their range increases because of climate change. So that's kind of some of the local effects that we're experiencing already from climate change. There are global effects that our entire Earth is experiencing: wildfires, heat waves, droughts, famines, the infectious diseases. Populations are being displaced. This results in more forced migration of populations. So climate change is settled science. It's not. It is not questionable science anymore. Denying human-caused climate change is sort of like saying the Earth is flat at this point. We really are experiencing a climate emergency at this point, and it's actually accelerating. And some of the more recent reports from both our federal government reports and from the United Nations have indicated that there's an acceleration of global change and global climate disruption. So the 350 Vermont Climate Solutions Resolution, Articles 9 and 10, are really a way of, they're non-binding resolutions. We're asking our legislators to do what they can to enact legislatively, both for the town of Middlebury, one of the articles, and for the state of Vermont to move aggressively forward with legislation that would, some of this is suggested in the articles, that would start to reverse climate change. It's something that we all, I think that we all want to see happen, and it's a way that we on a local level can start contributing to global change. So I hope that you will endorse these ballots and vote for them. And I also want to thank the Middlebury students from the Sunday Night Environmental Group, who we've been working with, who have really contributed a lot to popularizing this and to making sure this ballot gets on is voted on. And I want to thank my wife Chip, who started this initiative from 350 Vermont and 350 Vermont itself too. So I'm going to pass this on to Alec.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Alec. I'm a Middlebury College student, and climate change.
Just your last name, Alec, for the.
Fleischer. Climate change is one of the major issues of our time, and I don't think anyone here is debating that. But it's what could Vermont do about it? So we've had an outsized impact in producing emissions, and this bill is really encouraging primarily the state to start reversing that. So the first thing is halt new fossil fuel infrastructure. So what this would do is preemptively say projects like the Vermont gas pipeline are not welcome here. In a warming world, we should not be investing new money in fossil fuel projects that will have a lifetime of 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We got to start moving to renewable energy. And we especially need to do this considering the state is nowhere on track to hit its already passed emissions plan to reduce emissions by 90% by 2050. And we also need to ensure this is an equitable transition. And the reason why I'm working on this bill and why I think it's so important is because it directly relates to the state. Right now in committee, there's S60, which is effectively this on a binding state level. And they need help. 38 towns have already passed this, and I'm sure more have because their town meetings ended before ours. But we really ask for your support tomorrow, and this bill passing Middlebury and then the Vermont legislature would put Vermont at the forefront of reducing its emissions, especially in the absence of federal action. Thank you.
Van?
Can I speak over here?
Well,
sorry. You can go next. I'll be very fast.
Okay.
My name is Lee Herdman, and I just wanted to say that we spent a really long time talking about the infrastructure budget, and this is a no-cost way to limit our infrastructure budget in the future. The types of stormwater infrastructure and stuff that we do, that will get wiped out with the large precipitation events that are projected if we do nothing about climate change. So
we can save ourselves a lot of long town meetings in the future if we start acting on climate change now to protect our infrastructure for the future.
Van.
Hi, Van Barth. I'm here on behalf of the Middlebury Energy Committee, and we would like to say that both Chip and Jack have come to us multiple times over the past 6 months, and after reviewing the proposed resolution, we unanimously support it since it's consistent with our goals of reducing greenhouse gases and promoting energy savings. And we think that the economic benefits of weatherization and rooftop solar and getting an early start on fossil fuels benefit the town and also protects the environment for future generations. So no matter how you look at this, economically, environmentally, or ethically, it's the right thing to do, and the committee urges you to vote in favor of this tomorrow.
Other comments on Articles 9 and 10? Anything else? Any other business to come before the annual meeting? Elizabeth?
I know you're not the school board, but you collect revenues and bill to the school board. I respectfully ask that we get more complete notice of the school board meeting next year. The last 2 years, I haven't seen a card that arrived in the mail. The school budget is bigger, I believe, than the town budget. I would like to have gone to those meetings. I would like to be up there. Communities being respectful. Thank you.
I think generally the last Tuesday in February, is that correct? Is that right, Heather?
So yes, if you want to mark your calendar, the last Tuesday in February is the annual meeting of the school board where they do the review of the budget. So it was last Tuesday.
George?
I'm George Cloak. I'm remembering Dick Goodrow tonight. Maybe some people don't know that Dick Goodrow died last month in Ormond Beach, Florida. He served this town, our town, as town manager and town treasurer for many years. And I'd like to ask the officials of the town to send greetings to Darrell and Dick's family to let them know that we're thinking about them tonight.
Thanks for mentioning that, George. He was a great public servant indeed, and sat at this table as Ann is tonight for, more than 2 decades, I think, and a great guy as well as a dedicated public servant. Thanks for helping us remember Dick. Anything else to come before the annual meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Margaret, seconded by Al. All in favor of adjourning the annual meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the annual meeting stands adjourned.
This one isn't as long.